opportunity to share a little bit of the work that I've been doing over the past 40 something years. In this case, we're going to focus on a group of bats that are very, very important for the Mexican identity, but also for the rest of the world, for the reasons that you will see. I do want to recognize the presence of Tom Mustill and his lovely mother, Caroline Mustill. Caroline, so good to hear that you're there, and thank you for your interest here. And most of you will not know exactly why am I recognizing these people. Well, Tom directed this documentary that really catapulted me into the front and center of the world, which is entitled "The Batman of Mexico." That is in the BBC player right now. You can enjoy it, you can suffer it, name it whatever you want. But Tom is the director of that film. All right, so with that, I am going to start sharing my screen. Here we go. So this is a love story that I am going to tell you. It's been going on for 10 million years and more. And I am going to start first with hang on, with a very brief introduction to what are bats. Bats are mammals just like us, our dogs, our cats. They give birth to live babies. They drink milk. They're warm-blooded and they're covered with fur. Most of them, not all of them, as you can see me. All right, so then many people say that bats are simply rats that grew wings. That is nothing farther from the truth. All rodents, if you've seen a rat, you've seen them all. They all have the same morphology, elongated snout, bulging eyes, round ears, and that's it. And the same food, they eat either seeds or leaves or vegetation, that's it. And every female rodent, every female mouse may have 4 or 5 parturitions every year. And in every birth, she's going to have 6 or 8 or even more babies. So they have an incredible reproductive potential. They are short-lived. The longest lived mouse in the wild is about 2 to 3 years, and that's it. And of course, they're unable to fly. If we look to the bats, the incredible morphology of the bats is so diverse that it will blow your mind away. And mark my words, it will blow your mind away in a few minutes. They eat all kinds of different foods, from fruit to insects to nectar and pollen to fish to other bats. And there's 3 species that feed on blood, exactly. Every female bat gives birth to a single offspring, a single baby every year. And they are very long lived. Today, we have the record of the longest lived bat in the world that is 43 years old, and it's still alive well in Germany. And they, of course, do fly. All right, so you've seen one mouse, you've seen them all. There's 2,200 species of all of those things, but they have a very standard morphology and natural history. However, you look at the bats, there's more than 1,500 species. Mexico has 146 species. Only five countries have more species than Mexico. Many have very, very diverse diets and very abundant in the tropics. So let's look at this. 3 out of every 4 bats feed on insects, and they can build colonies of up to millions of bats in one single colony. About 12% of the bats feed on fruit, and those can be as abundant as hundreds of thousands in one colony alone. There's about 10% of those species of bats that feed on nectar and pollen from different species of flowers, and that can survive in colonies of hundreds of thousands of bats. And then there's 3 or 4 species that feed on fish that live in colonies of up to 100 bats. Those carnivorous bats that feed on the flesh of rodents and other bats and birds and things like that, that form colonies of less than 10. And then those 3 species that feed on blood, that can conform colonies of up to 1,000 bats in a single one. This is just one view of 12 of Mexico's 146 species of bats. And you can see here bats with enormous ears, bats with tiny ears, bats with big eyes, with tiny little eyes, with long snouts, with short snouts, and every type of morphology codes for a very different natural history, the very, very different biology. So let's look at the tequila bats in particular. And here you can see this is an agave flower that we put in a fly cage, and you can see the bats coming to pollinate those agave flowers that are there. The column is completely covered with flowers, and then some of them sometimes want to pollinate me, as you can see in that little clip right there, right? Okay, so this is the star of the show, the tequila bat, as Sir David Attenborough named it, the tequila bat. So these species are, when you start working on nectar feeding bats and you go to the tropics of Mexico, you are going to find a very typical and very abundant species of nectar feeding bat. This guy here, the long tongue bat, that is usually associated with any generalized flower, not necessarily elongated or anything, and that bat is going to be able to pollinate it. You keep working with those bats, and then in time, you're going to find another one that has a little longer of a snout that is associated with a little deeper flowers like that. You continue working, and that is our tequila bat. The head and the ears are completely covered in pollen, that you can see in that photo. And of course, the flowers of the columnar cacti that they feed on can be considered like a key going into a keyhole, and that's because the bats are closely, finely tuned to extract the nectar from all the way deep into the flower. There's another species there. This is the Mexican hognose bat, and you can see in this little video here. What am I going to do? I'm going to put its snout inside that flower. Look at what happens. The face goes all the way into the flower, and look at how it comes out. Completely covered with pollen. Okay, so you keep going, working on nectar feeding bats, and finally you have this incredibly crazy thing. This is the longest snout of any bat, and it's associated with very, very deep flowers like that. So this has been going on for millions and millions of years. So let's focus on the tequila bat again. This is the tequila bat, or the lesser long-nosed bat. It's a species that was put in the United States list of endangered species as endangered in 1988, and we put it in Mexico in 1993 as a threatened species. Immediately in 1994, I drafted the recovery plan, and we started enacting the recovery actions heavily based on those three-pronged strategy, basically conservation actions, research, and environmental education. So here it's 20 years of research compressed into a single slide. In gray, you can see the range of the species. In pink, those colonies that are a few thousand of bats in it. And then in red, it's those that have tens of thousands. And this is the single one that has hundreds of thousands of bats, the Pinacate Desert. When we go there, we have to focus on estimating how many bats are in that cave. So we use infrared cameras with infrared videos documenting the entire emergence of the bats coming out of the cave. And Tom will probably, he's still in attendance, he will recognize this landscape. That is the cave of the Pinacate. This is the entrance of the cave from the outside. And when you're at night there and you take a similar picture from the inside, you see this amazing, amazing landscape. I want you to please look at the incredibly heavy bellies of all of these females. these females have been migrating, and it's only the females that migrate from central and southern Mexico, more than 2,000 kilometers, all the way north to extreme northern Mexico, and give birth to their babies in that cave. So this is what the infrared camera sees. This stays like that for about 2, 3, sometimes as far as 4 hours. And this is where we basically burn student eyes in front of the computer, counting how many bats are coming out. And of course, every year that I do that, I have to gauge the reproductive success. How many babies have those females have in that cave? But I cannot go in the cave during the day because I will destroy the possibility of these babies growing, because the females are going to get really upset and drop the baby. I have to wait until the last female comes out, and then I go in, and this is what I find: an incredible landscape of only babies on the roof of the cave, packed like nothing ever you've seen. And now I want to ask you to please think that you may be one of those females that are going to work, and you are leaving your baby in kindergarten, going to work, and when you come back from work, you get this nightmare. What would you do to identify your baby there? How do you know which one is your baby? So in this next video, I want you to focus on this particular baby right here. When the video starts, you will see that the babies are very nonchalantly stretching their wings, looking at each other, so on and so forth. And then in 2 or 3 seconds after the start of the video, this baby is going to become incredibly restless. He knows, we don't know how or why, and this is work in progress, but he knows that mom is back even before the mother comes into the frame of vision of the camera. And then the female is going to come from this side, and she's going to start sniffing this baby, and she finally gets to this one. What tells this baby that this is his mother and no, not any other female that may have been there? So here we go. It starts like that. All the babies are nonchalantly, and then he goes crazy, and there's the mother coming in, sniffing and making and checking every baby there. And then she goes, wait a minute, are you my boy? I don't know, let me check, let me look, let me see. She does something with her snout, with her tongue. Look at the tongue flicking in and out. And once she's sure that this is indeed her baby, she then lets the baby latch onto the nipple of the mother, and then she's going to fly away with her baby on board. So we have hours and hours and hours of this behavior, but we have not found the key of what are the babies seeing that are allowing them to identify the female. All right, so let's go into agaves. Agaves are century plants, and you can see them in Kew Gardens. In fact, when Kew has a flowering agave, they actually break their ceiling, break the skylight to let the agave inflorescence go through, because you can see that the height of those plants is really, really massive. Okay, so there's about 200 species of agave in the world. Mexico has more species of agaves than any other country in the world. And guess what? They are bat pollinated. So let's look at what agaves do. They start accumulating sugars year after year after year after year. Depending on the species, they can live for 6 to 8 years. In the case of agave tequilana, the one that is used for tequila, up to 35 years or more in some instances. And then they come to the moment in which they can actually reproduce sexually, which means that they are going to start growing this incredible flowering stalk. And that flowering stalk is going to then open up its arms and offer the nectar and the pollen to its pollinators, the bats. So for many millions of years, more than 10 million years, bats and agaves have been connected, in the sense that bats come to visit these flowers and enjoy the incredible nectar that they provide. And in the process, they provide sexual reproduction for agaves. But of course, you can see here in this photo on the right that this at the bottom, at the base of the plant, that is the asexual part of the plant. And this is the sexual part of the plant. So you can actually see here and understand that this effort really costs the agave its life. Once it flowers, that's the end of the life of the species. She's going to flower, produce seeds, replace itself in the system, and die. One single sexual reproductive event after decades of growing and accumulating sugars. So we could really boil down this connection of more than 10 million years between bats and agaves to this very simple slide. Bats are looking for food, and agaves are looking for sex. And they complement each other so well that it's been incredibly successful for both groups of animals, for both groups of living entities, for bats and for agaves. So, why is all of this important? Well, guess what, my friends? Tequila, of course. Tequila is at the bottom of this whole thing. And let's look at these statistics here. More than 2.5 billion tons of agave heads were harvested in 2022, and from there, 650 million liters of tequila were produced. The economy of more than 100,000 Mexican families is linked to the tequila production, and the global tequila market is reaching to about $10 billion. So that is a very important part of the Mexican economy. So we are all connected. All the Mexicans are connected to the tequila industry, and therefore, of course, to the bats. The problem here comes because in this process over the past 150 years, tequila producers have not allowed a single plant to flower. They envision that a flowering agave is a wasted agave. And instead, they harvest the agaves just before they flower, because that is when they have the largest amount of sugars in the agave head. And therefore, they maximize the amount of tequila that they can produce from those agaves. So, what they've done for these 150 years is to use the baby agaves that grow under the parent plants that you can see there carried by this man and in that little trailer. They use those clonal babies, exact genetic copies from the agaves, to replant their fields time after time after time, generation after generation. So let's say, for example, that you have 1 hectare of agave heads, of agave plants. You have about 4,000 plants in that 1 hectare, and then you're going to harvest them, and you will use the clones, the baby agaves that have been produced by maybe 200 or 300 agaves, and that's it. All of the rest, all of the plants, all of the adult plants are being turned into tequila with not a single one allowed to flower. So in that one stroke of using the clones of 200 to 300 plants to replant the fields, they have lost 90 to 95% of the genetic diversity of these plants. So much so that only a few years ago, some other colleagues documented that more than 300 million plants of agave are clones of 10 individuals, and only 10 individuals. They have lost more than 99.9% of their historical genetic diversity. And that is the perfect storm. That is looking for trouble. I started doing this with the tequila industry, the Tequila Regulatory Council, in the 90s. I went to see them. I said, guys, it's time for you to start investing in your partners, the bats. If you want to make sure that your agaves have a future, please allow a certain percentage of agaves to flower. And they were very, very nice, very courteous and everything. They listened very, very carefully to what I said. And at the end, they said, well, thank you very much, Dr. Medellin, for coming and sharing your ideas with us. Goodbye. And that was the end of it. And then in 2005, a friend of mine, also from the University of Mexico, published a paper showing that those 270 million plants of agaves are clones of only those 10 individuals. So I went back out there. I said, guys, all it takes is for one disease to hit one plant, and all of your plants are going to be sick. You don't want that. You do not want that. Please think about maybe allowing a certain percentage and so on and so forth. And again, they said, oh, wow. Oh, that is amazing. Thank you very much for coming and telling us, sir. Okay, goodbye. Bye bye. Bye bye. And then in 2011, the disease shows up. The fact that it was there opened the door to the possibility of really doing something about it. This is the disease that is showing up. Today, up to 40% of agave plots are affected by this tristeza y muerte, or sadness and death of agave, because the core is rotted by a combination of a bacteria and a fungus. And then that is the moment in 2013 that I finally got in touch with Mr. David Suro, the president of Tequila Interchange Project, an organization that is determined to maintain sustainability and ensure that the agave industry is socially responsible and environmentally friendly. And he said, well, this is exactly what I've been looking for all my life. So let's join forces and see what we can do. And from that alliance is how we created the bat-friendly tequila and mezcal. We're only asking that if you allow 5% of your agaves to flower, you will be feeding about 100 bats per hectare, and you can still use the remaining 95% of the agaves to produce your tequila. The agaves resulting from that sexual reproduction, the pollination mediated by bats, is going to be the safety measure for the future of agaves. And you can label that tequila with that label that we put on the bottle, telling the consumer, this is a bat-friendly tequila. And it's going to be the consumer who is going to make the decision on whether to drink a bat-friendly tequila or any other tequila for that matter. So in 2016, we launched 300,000 bottles of bat-friendly tequila. Those are the brands that are currently in our program. They continue to grow. They continue to produce bat-friendly tequila. You can see the label here that you can see right on the bottle. What you see here is nothing short of historical. This has not happened in over 150 years. This man is one of the owners of one of the tequila brands. This is Tequila Cascahuín, Mr. Salvador Rosales, and he's seeing the first agave flowers in his life. He had never seen agave flowering in his fields. So that is where we come in. This is part of the Bat Friendly program. And then his crew comes in and they harvest the remaining 95% while the flowers continue to grow. They continue to grow. They finally branch out and offer the nectar to the bats. And that's where we come in, my crew and I. And we put the mist nets there, our nets, to make sure whether the bats are actually coming back and visiting these flowers and pollinating them or not. And of course, they're coming in. You can see the bats there. You can see the bats here as well. And you can see the bats here. Of course, the bats are never going to forget this incredible resource for them. So this is a good love story, a good conservation success story that the press around the world took to heart. They really promoted the concept all over the world. They gave us the cover of the National Geographic magazine. Many other media outlets, news outlets, picked it up, and they basically promoted the concept of the bat-friendly tequila. There is an even better model, the mezcal. This is the denomination of origin region of all of Mexico. You can see here the different states in which mezcal is being produced. Mezcal comes from at least 54 species of agave, different from tequila, that is only a single species of agave, a very restricted, very limited denomination of origin, very, very different conditions for mezcal. There's a lot more originality and much more connectivity in terms of where these agaves are coming from. Indeed, I would like to ask you now to think of your favorite alcoholic beverage. If it's beer, you are connected to the earth, to Mother Nature for 1 year only. because beer comes from a grass that grows for 1 year and then it's harvested. Similar thing with rum. Rum is only sugarcane that grows for 1 year and it is harvested. Whiskey, same thing, my friends, same thing. Even cognac and brandy with grapes that grow 1 year and then they go dormant and they grow again and they go dormant. So wine is the same thing. And even tequila comes from monocultures as far as you can see. So if you're really a friend of biodiversity, your beverage of choice should be mezcal. Many mezcals do not come from monocultures. And in addition, many mezcals are plants that are up to 30 years of age. So the roots of the plant and the roots of the beverage that you are drinking at the time is a lot more connected to the environment than any other alcoholic beverage that you can think of. So next time you think about maybe drinking a tequila because you're celebrating Mexico's independence, etc., please, I am asking you to raise your glass and your first sip to toast to the health of bats and agaves and thank them for the incredible benefit that they provide to us. You can become bat friendly in your bar or in your restaurant. You simply add a brief explanation of what is it that bats do so that you can enjoy this incredible product. Talk to your clients, talk to your friends, invite your friends and your clients to support the program. Each bat friendly drink, the bar donates $1 to the program. And that's how we've been surviving all these years. There are already bat friendly bars in London. It is an easy and straightforward and no-brainer way of turning a bad situation into a win-win situation. So let's celebrate our good friends, the bats, the Mexican long-nosed bat and the lesser long-nosed bat. And with that, I want to thank my incredible team. Everything I do, everything I say here is because this incredible group of people have been working really, really hard out in the field. They are all crazy, but I do believe that the world belongs to the crazy people. And with that, I would like to thank you again for your attendance. Okay, I don't know if there's any questions.
Thank you so much. Thank you. One thing that I would like you to add, if possible, is to talk about your childhood and how your parents allowed you to have bats in the bathroom and you would feed them that.
Okay, sure, sure. All right. So this is a little bit of ancient history. Basically, how I started going into this direction. My life has always been surrounded by animals, and I don't mean anything bad about my family being animals or anything like that. What I mean is that my first word was not mama or dada or duru. My first word was flamingo. And my mom recorded it in my baby book, saying, Little Rodrigo said his first word today. He was pointing at a picture of a flamingo on a book, and he said ganglingo or something like that. So from that moment on, every Christmas, every birthday that I've had, I've always wanted to have books on animals, and I wanted to go to the zoo or go to the field to see animals. So mammals have been really at the center of my entire life. And then when I was about 11 years old, there was this contest on national TV in Mexico, the 64,000 peso contest. And in that 64,000 peso contest, what they do is you you as a contestant submit a topic, and they are going to ask questions on that topic. And every time you answer correctly, you are going to double the amount of pesos that you're winning. I told my mom that I wanted to be there. I said, if they ask questions about mammals, I can answer. And my mom said, no, 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 you're 11 years old, for crying out loud. Go and play with your friends. It's not your job to do something like this. But I kept pushing and pushing and pushing, and bless her heart, my mother took me to the producers. And the producers told my mom, well, this is a contest in which people are going to showcase the information that they have in their head. It's not for a child to throw a ball at something and get some prize. So my mom said, well, why don't you ask little Rodrigo a few questions and you judge for yourself? So they pulled out a book on mammals and they started asking questions and started responding and responding and responding. And pretty soon they said, well, congratulations, you're going to be the first kid in the show. And then I started appearing, and this, of course, when I was 11, it's there's all of three channels in Mexican TV. Everyone is watching because this was prime time. It was Saturdays at 7:30. Everyone is watching, including the dean of Mexican mammalogy, the man who started the studies of mammals in Mexico. And he saw me on TV. He called the TV station. He said, I need the phone of this kid. I'm going to invite him to the university. So he called me. He said, if you really want to continue learning about mammals, I can invite you to the Institute of Biology of the University of Mexico, and you can come with us to the field, etc. Of course, that was a dream come true for me. And I started going out when I was 12, and that is when the first bat came into my hands. And I became absolutely fascinated with these incredible animals. And then I started bringing bats into my home. And my parents were, at the beginning, they were not very happy, but they were incredibly understanding. They were amazingly welcoming to all my crazy ideas. I mean, yes, I did have insect eating bats. I have fruit eating bats. I had vampire bats living in my house. I had rattlesnakes. I had scorpions, tarantulas, you name it. I had them there. So that really sealed my fate. And to this day, I continue to be that same 12-year-old child. And if right now that I'm here in a very beautiful, you cannot see it here, but it's a really beautiful, very old building in downtown Mexico City. If I see a bat coming in, I am going to forget about this event. I'm going to focus on the bat. So that's how I started.
I just want to sort of sum up your talk. Basically you've given your life to the study of bats, and your story is a success story. You've officially saved the lesser long-nosed bat from extinction. Is that still the case?
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah.
It's the first and so far the only species of mammal leaving the federal list of endangered species of Mexico due to a recovery program that I led, I created, and I coordinated for 25 years.
Amazing. And the bats not only face urbanization, people's fear of bats. I mean, I grew up in Mexico where we used to have a lot of bats in Tepoztlán, Morelos. And, in the 70s and 80s, people would be not really scared of them. We have fewer bats because also all the fertilization that is used in the Mexican countryside. We have very aggressive hurricanes now that also scare the bats. How are
Absolutely.
you and your team mitigating all these threats?
Well, yeah, climate change is something that we're all coping with. We're only learning, we're only starting to find ways of coping with this. If you want to know more about this, I am going to direct you to the documentary, the BBC film, The Batman of Mexico. I'm not going to spoil it for you, but there's
Yeah, I know.
hurricanes in the mix, and we did get in trouble with that. What was the other question, though? Sorry,
A
you're
couple of
muted.
times. Tell us about the experience of filming there, because you went into these caves and it was full of bat poo and cockroaches. And what was that like filming that?
It was a lot of fun. I mean, this is my life. My peaceful place has always been and will always be a cave. I was in a cave last week, and I'm going to be in a cave in 3 days again with my students and teaching them all of these things. The caves are really an inner sanctum of Mexico and any other country in the world. That is really, really a beautiful landscape that you cannot help but be in awe at the biological diversity inside and at how important they are for the environment around all of these landscapes.
You also do advocacy. How has your work been convincing people that bats are not bad? I mean, how tell us about the process.
Well, that's a very good question, Susanna, because basically what happens is that there's many species of animals that have a negative public image. Nobody likes snakes or spiders or sharks or scorpions or bats. Nobody likes them. None of those do more for your everyday well-being than bats. Bats touch every day of your life, from controlling the pests of your corn or your rice or your cotton or your chili peppers or your beans or you name it, but also eating mosquitoes and other pests like that. And then they also provide incredible ecosystem services in terms of seed dispersal. And this is another advertisement that I wanted to say here. National Geographic is about to release a new documentary. It's only a 22-minute long documentary entitled Leaf Architects. I have some of that in my social media, in Instagram, Batman Medellin. You are going to find the link and the preview to the Leaf Architects documentary, in which we show how important these bats are for the recovery of tropical forests and how this is becoming an incredible public policy in Mexico, in Guatemala, and Costa Rica, and many other countries. I am advisor to the Mexican federal government, and they even today they listen to me about bats. So this is going to become an incredible new source of information for them. And finally, of course, pollination in terms of the bats. Uh, Bats have something really interesting, Susanna, and that is that when you start talking about bats, people start paying attention. It's not, I mean, there's a lot of people who love birds and everything like that, but birds do not entice this curiosity, this very elemental curiosity in human beings. You talk to a child, and they are much more likely to engage into learning about bats than to learning about birds or any other groups. Dinosaurs and bats are about the same boat, but really bats capture the imagination and the fantasy of people. So it's very easy. I've said it many times. You give me, and I hope I've achieved this today. You give me an audience of whatever, kindergarten children or senator or students or former students in the UK. And in 15 minutes, half an hour, I am going to turn them into bat defenders. I really hope that everyone here today is going to become a bat defender from now on in the rest of their lives.
100%. We have some questions. Arturo, you want to go
Hi,
ahead and ask your
Rodrigo.
question?
Congratulations. It was amazing. Well, I have two quick questions, Rodrigo. Right now, I'm in Jalisco, in a little town that is becoming a very high producer of tequila, unfortunately, and they have destroyed lots of the environment around the town. It's called Encarnación de Díaz, La Chona, Jalisco. My
Nachona.
question is, I've been away for almost 40 years from here, and something I noticed, and you just say something very interesting. I don't see bats anymore, and there are lots of mosquitoes. I mean, just yesterday we had a conversation about this. There are so many mosquitoes and so many plants of tequila now around. That do you think? I mean, my question is: if they allow the plants to flower, do the bats will come because of that for sure?
100%,
Okay,
100%. However, Arturo, the bats that are going to come to those flowers are nectar feeding bats,
okay,
not insectivorous bats. And you probably
okay,
have lost your insectivorous bats, and you can also do something for those bats to attract them to your land. Basically, what you're going to do, go Google bat houses. There's a lot of information, and the UK has a massive, massive program of bat houses. You
okay.
can it can be a family project for you and your friends, your neighbors, etc. You build a bat house, which is basically a box. It can be this big. It can be as big as Dulce Ramos tells us in Austin, Texas, where Congress Avenue Bridge, there's a massive bridge that has about 1 million bats there. You can make it as big or as small as you want. But all of the information and all of the materials and the orientation and the height and all of that is there. Look for bat houses and put them out there, and you will bring the bats back.
And my other question was, what happened to the environment and to the locations where there were bats, and then the bat disappears because of what degradation of the environment? What happened to those places? What is the consequences?
You mean for these bats?
For no, to the environment. If the bat disappeared, what happened to
I
the
see. I see what you mean. All right. So this touches in the let's focus on the insectivorous bats. And I've said this many times. Just in the northern fringe, northern border of Mexico, from the state of Sonora to the state of Tamaulipas, we estimate that we have between 30 and 40 million bats of one species, the Mexican free-tailed bat, the same that is in Congress Avenue Bridge in Austin. All right. So those 30 to 40 million bats, each million bats destroys 10 tons of insects every night. 10 tons of it. Just think of 10 tons of insects. And that is only the northern fringe of Mexico, and only one species, those 30 to 40 million bats, are destroying 300 to 400 tons of insects every night. So think for a second that we lose them overnight. Well, guess what? Insects are not going to have the control, the population control that represents the bats. And in three weeks, a month, 2 months, we're not going to have any crop whatsoever. This has been my message to the Secretary of Agriculture, and we have now a program promoting and protecting bat caves, be it from nectar feeding bats, insect eating bats, fruit eating bats, any other bat.
Thank you, Rodrigo, very much.
Sure.
Damaris, please go ahead, Damaris.
Yes, so it sounds to me like you're a man who loves a campaign, and I wondered if you had a new campaign in your head and in your plans.
Well, the work of a conservation professional is to get yourself out of work, because there's so much, so many problems in conservation in the world, that you really have to solve one problem and move on, solve one problem and move on, solve one problem and move on. So I continue to have this campaign for bats, and protecting bats has been one of the missions of my life. But currently, I'm creating something called Global South Cats, working on the big cats of the world: lions, leopards, tigers, snow leopards, and jaguars. They need your help. They need the help of everyone. And I'm basically connecting. What I'm doing is connecting and empowering people working on those five big cats across Asia, Latin America, and Africa, that never talk to each other. We never see each other. We never talk to each other. We never learn from each other. And there's so many different initiatives and solutions to save the cats and to solve the issues of coexistence between big cats and humans, that little by little we're making progress there. Now, having said that, Damaris, in the UK, you do have your own issues there. I know that there is talk about maybe bringing back the wildcat and maybe even the lynx to the UK. Please promote that, because you need it, and the countryside of the UK is going to benefit from having this top predator that you lost many hundreds of years ago.
Thank you. Thank you. We have a question from Emma Norman.
Hi, thank you. Thanks, Rodrigo. That's been very amazing. I knew nothing about bats, and Susanna invited me, and what an amazing and inspiring man you are. So thank you. What are the bat challenges we have in the UK? I've quickly looked at the Bat Conservation Trust. So what are the problems we have in the UK with bats? What are the challenges we have, and what's the impact of that?
Like in many other places in the world, the main threat to bats is lack of information in the people. And the Bat Conservation Trust is an amazing group of people who are absolutely determined to changing this, to informing people in the UK about how important bats are. However, there's still a lot of ignorance, a lot of lack of information there. And I don't have to tell you this, but all of your bats in the UK are protected by law. If you have a family of bats living in the belfry of your home, you cannot remove them. You have to talk to the Bat Conservation Trust, and they're going to find some alternative, some solution, or maybe even ask you to coexist with these bats.
Okay.
Many years ago, nobody knows exactly how long ago, all of Europe and the UK had this horrible disease, the white nose syndrome, that came to the United States in upstate New York in 2006, and it has killed about 7 million bats since then. But your bats in the old world have developed resistance to this disease. So thank God that that disease is not going to cause any more deaths on your bats there. Mainly, the main issue in the UK is going to be vandalism in the roosts and lack of information, with people just saying, I don't want any bats here, get them out. If you wanted, and just one little bit of advice as well, this is a suggestion. If you want to have fun, of course, this is the winter is coming, as they say, right? So bats are already tucked away and they are hibernating right now. But in the spring, go look for something called a bat detector. It's a little device that you put on your phone and turns your phone into a bat detector. And you can stroll your evening walk looking at your phone, pointing it at the sky, and this little thing is going to pick up the echolocation calls of the bats flying around you, and it's even going to tell you the species that you have flying around you. The commercial name is Ecometer Touch, and they do sell in the UK.
Thank you. Thanks for that.
Thank you for that. Just a little aside, perhaps Richard Maudsley can tell us about how, when he was building his house in the north of England, he had to make a special sort of mini cave for the bats. Richard?
Really?
Yes, we wanted to demolish an old house, and we were told, as the house had been empty for 15 years, we had to have a bat survey. And the bat surveyor said we had to fit 8 English bat boxes. And that was fine. We were very happy to do that. But then the county ecologist said she didn't like the idea of 8 English bat boxes. She wanted 6 English ones and 2 special German ones. And we looked up the special German bat boxes on the German bat box website, and it says that they have very small steps at the entrance that are highly suited to inexperienced bats.
They do.
So we have installed the 2 special German bat boxes, and we put a sign in German next to these bat boxes saying inexperienced bats this way, with 2 arrows. But I have to tell you that after 8 years, not a single bat has ever used any of the bat boxes, either the English ones or the German ones.
Okay, that is good to know. Let me give you a word of suggestion, Richard. If you can, go to your nearest bat colony, grab a little bucket of bat guano, make it into a slurry, and paint the inside of your bat houses with that. That is going to make your bat houses smell like home to the bats. And number 2, go to your phone and make a voice note. Record the squeaking and the squealing of the bats inside the colony. They're always going to be going. Okay, that you record maybe 1 or 2 minutes of that, and then you put it in a loop and put it in a speaker outside the bat house, and it's going to sound like home. That is going to do the trick.
I'll try it.
Hey, Arturo has another question.
Is there any risk of reintroducing bats? Just want to know that.
They will take care of their own reintroduction. Just if you have any piece of land, even if it's a garden, Arturo, and here is a request for anyone living in Mexico in this group. Just plant a couple of agaves and let them go to flower, and you will see the bats there. However, my request is this: go out and buy hummingbird feeders and and fill the hummingbird feeder with just sugar water, all right? But then, and I have friends, we are this is a citizen science project. We're already documenting it in Guadalajara and in Chapala. But in La Chona, we don't have anybody. In Arandas, we don't have anybody. In Arenal, we don't have anybody. You're going to fill your hummingbird feeder at night and just keep an eye on it. If in the morning your hummingbird feeder is low or empty, that means that you're having bats there. So
Okay.
go out at night, and if they are bats there, then let me know. And then we will send you a little device called a pit tag detector. We've been deploying pit tags that are little devices this big, the size and the shape of a grain of rice, under the skin of the back of the bats. And that allows us to track them wherever they go. So we have hummingbird feeders with pit tag readers on board. So any bat that comes, and if it's one of our bats, is going to be read. And that you can become then one of our citizen scientists.
Do you have, you and your team, any videos to inform people that are new about this, to learn about these things? Do you guys have?
Absolutely. Go to my social media, and you're gonna find them there.
Perfect. Thank you, Rodrigo.
Mhm.
Any more questions?
Hi.
Yes. Hi.
Hi, Rodrigo. I
Hi,
live in
Mexico.
Mexico City. I have listened to about your work in the radio. So as soon as Susana invited me, I said yes, and I'm here. Yes, I live in Austin, Texas. I knew nothing about bats. The first time I was there was for a conference, and we were taken for bat seeing just as an attraction. When I moved there, I took my boyfriend, and I think it wasn't the right season because we didn't so many bats. Can you please tell me when it is the right time to see bats, especially in places like Austin?
Sure. In places like Austin, or okay, so it's basically the same because we're in the northern hemisphere, and right now the bats are either dormant, hibernating, or they have migrated to more tropical latitudes. So the bats in Austin are leaving or have already left. The bats in Mexico City, they're still here because the temperatures are still good for them. It's very easy to see them, but comes March, when the temperature is starting to come back up, go to any park in the city that has white lights. And the white lights are attracting moths and bugs and things like that. Give it a minute, give it 2 minutes, Dulce, and you will see bats flying and feeding on those things. I've taken, when Marcelo Ebrard was mayor of Mexico City, I showed him the bats that were living in his office right here in downtown Mexico. So they're all over the place. And if you're more interested, we host bat nights in Chapultepec Park. Although of course the season is over now. So follow us, and you will see the information once we're in March. We're gonna have we're gonna start the bat walks again, the bat nights.
Wonderful. Well, let's organize a bat night from London. We'll all fly over. And
You do have bat nights in London as well, you know.
how do we?
Bat Conservation Trust organizes that. They go out with bat detectors, and you can see the bats and hear them with your phone.
Ah, okay. Well, it's a new world waiting for us. Thank you. More questions. Don't be shy. Well, what are the main sort of challenges that you still face, even after all these years of doing this work? What is still there?
The main challenges is really that, for example, for the bat-friendly tequila, bat-friendly mezcal program, that I am the bottleneck. I am just an academic. I am just a professor at the University of Mexico, and my lab is not big enough to face this challenge. So I am encouraging my students to establish an NGO or some kind of organization that they can replicate this effort. At this point in time, I have all of 3 students that are in charge of this program. It cannot be the job of 3 students that they have to go to the state of Jalisco and then Guerrero and then Oaxaca and then Michoacan. It's crazy. It's crazy. So if the world was ideal, what I would do would be, number one, to clone me, to replicate me and make 3 more Rodrigos, and maybe that'll help. But at the same time, I realized that I am not young anymore. So over the past 10 years, what I've done is to replace myself in the system, to train as many students I possibly can to so that they take over and they keep going. So that is the main challenges, really.
And how do you fund this work? Are you always looking for grants?
We're always looking for grants and donations and any kind of contribution that is very, very welcome. And of course, this organization is donating, and I want to recognize Richard and the whole group for your generosity, because we know that we're going to get a donation from you guys. Thank you so much. But yes, I mean, in previous years, in previous times, it used to be the federal government of Mexico would be a very important donor for our work. Not today, because the previous presidential period was an absolute disaster and we lost many of those opportunities. Thankfully, we have international organizations, and one of them that I want to really shout out to is the Whitley Fund for Nature, that is based in the UK. Her Royal Highness Princess Anne is a patron of that, and she is incredibly knowledgeable about bats. I mean, she had sat down with me for an hour at a time here and there, and guess what? I'm telling her all about bats. So so the Whitney Fund for Nature is a big one, National Geographic, but there's many publications. In fact, I just did a BBC podcast that aired about 2 weeks ago, if I recall well. And you can find it there because it's also Batman Mexico BBC, and you're going to find it there.
So it sounds like we need to be ambassadors for you everywhere we go.
Not for me, for the bats.
For the bats. Well, you can count on 20 new ambassadors tonight anyway.
Fantastic. Thank you very
Yes.
much. That's great.
Anything else that you'd like to add that we haven't asked you and you think is
it's just to promote this message. You will find it very easy to get these bits of information that I've shared with you, and just incorporate them into your casual conversations at the pub, at home, over barbecue, whatever, and just talk about bats. Bats need all the friends that they can possibly summon, and you guys can actually be very, very important ambassadors, as you say, Susanna, for bats. I'm always looking for students, for new students, because there's, I've talked about the nectar bats today, but I have all kinds of projects with insectivorous bats, with fruit-eating bats, like leaf architects, that I'm going to share later with and I am going to share the link to the Vimeo so that you can actually you can see that. But I think Dudley has another question.
Could I just make the question? Yeah, great. Years ago, I lived in San Luis Potosi and did research there, and I traveled around the state with an environmentalist, and he said that there were certain caves where the bats were produced a kind of illness that you should not go into those caves because there was simply an illness which could be fatal. From the bats, and I don't know if that's true or not. I just remembered now, actually.
Yes, it's good point, Dudley. Basically, what happens is that on the bat guano, when it's massive, when it's huge, tons and tons and tons of bat guano there might be a fungus that is called the histoplasma fungus that can cause histoplasmosis in humans. However, many humans are already resistant to this disease, because that fungus not only grows on bat guano, it also grows on pigeon dung and chicken dung, dog poo, cat poo, etc. So if you've been chasing doves down in Piccadilly Circus, you have been already exposed to the fungus, and your body already has the antibodies to fight that disease.
Thank you very much. That puts my mind at rest. Thank you.
I mean, Dudley's question reminds me of COVID, when people were misinformed and thought that COVID came from bats. Can you tell us about that experience?
Absolutely. I don't think I've ever worked harder than in those 2020, 21, 22 defending bats than ever before, because of the false accusations that bats gave us COVID. Years later, it was not until 2023 and 24 that it surfaced that there was this unscrupulous scientists that were doing everything they could to blame bats, to make bats the culprits, because they really wanted to get money. I mean, it's very easy to spook people about bats, to scare people about bats. And they were saying, oh, bats gave us this, bats gave us this. And it was absolutely out of any kind of reality. To this day, that person and his lab and his organization has been banned from getting any federal funds from any US government. And that is going to just continue. And instead, I am getting money from federal funds from the United States to study bats from an alternative point of view, which is the immune system of bats. It's very difficult to find a sick bat, a diseased bat. It's very rare to find one. And that is because the immune system of bats is the strongest immune system of any mammal. So right now we have a new team working in Uganda, understanding the immune system of bats to translate those principles into the human immune system. Imagine that. From being the culprits and the devils and the envoys of everything bad in the world, turning into lifesavers. That is in the future, in the near future, I have to say.
Well, good to hear. I'm so glad. Thank goodness the funding is going to you. We have one more question from Elizabeth Mystery, and she asks, can you please ask Rodrigo to speak about the impact of the Tren Maya on bats and other species, especially jaguars and tapirs, please?
Elizabeth, I know you. I know where you're coming from there. The previous president of Mexico had this crazy pharaonic dream of building a Mayan train on the Yucatan Peninsula, which became one of the most horrific environmental disasters in the history of Mexico. I came head to head with the president many times. I showed the blatant stupidity of trying to build a train on a surface that is a crust of karstic rock, basically calcium carbonate, that is a very soft rock that dissolves with water, and it's very brittle, and it breaks with nothing. You cannot build a train on that. Well, guess what? My president, in his morning news conferences, responded to me saying, I am going to respond to that pseudo-environmentalist, Rodrigo Medellin, that is paid by the United States to attack my administration, by saying that we know exactly what we're doing. We know that the rock in the Yucatan Peninsula is not very solid, and it's brittle, and it dissolves with water. And this is exactly why we are building the train on top of columns. Imagine that. Where are the columns based? On the rock, on that same rock. So it's only a matter of time. They've already been a couple of derailments, and the train only opened 2 years ago. So please do not go on a Mayan train because it's a tragedy in the making. We continue to work, and I'm advisor, like I said, to the Secretary of the Environment right now, and we are mitigating many of the effects of the train, but the disaster has happened already. It's very, very sad.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. Yeah, we're sorry to hear that.
Maybe I was just going to say that there is a common belief in the UK that Daubenton bats can carry rabies.
Okay, so yeah, rabies is an issue that has been grossly exaggerated. Turns out that that rabies is one of the oldest diseases that are what we call zoonotic diseases brought to humans by an animal. And today we have very, very few cases of human rabies. 99% of those human rabies cases around the world are caused by unvaccinated dogs and cats. And only 1% is brought about by a lynx or a bobcat or a fox or a coyote or any other wildlife, including every once in a while a bat that comes into contact with human beings. But we have also tested bats here in Mexico. We tested about 10,000 bats in 1 year, and less than 1% of those 10,000 bats had antibodies to rabies, meaning that they're not rabid, but they had some contact with the virus. And then we sacrificed about 5% of those 10,000 bats and looked for the actual virus in the brain. Not in a single instance we found a diseased bat. And that is exactly what I was saying. You do not find sick bats. It's very difficult to find sick bats. But thank you for the question.
Yes, thank you. We just have some more comments. Dudley says, may I endorse Rodrigo's comments on the Mayan train? It's an ecological catastrophe for the Yucatan.
Thank you, Dudley. It's true.
So we don't want to end on that very depressing note.
I just want to ask Rodrigo something else. Rodrigo, just by curiosity, do you work with the Desert Museum in Tucson, Arizona?
I was director of science at the Desert Museum in 2011, and I continue to have lots of friends and have some research projects there.
Because by personal reason, I go twice a year to Tucson, Arizona, and there are lots of bats. It's covered with bats all the time. That's what I was curious
Lots of
about.
agaves as well.
Lots.
But the nectar feeding bats are in Tucson, arriving in June and leaving in September.
Also pollinating the saguaros.
Exactly. But you know Campbell Avenue, and you know the Trader Joe's there.
Mm-hmm.
All right, under the bridge of Campbell Avenue, there's about 40,000 Mexican free-tailed bats every summer. I train the docents of the Desert Museum to come out to the parking lot of Trader Joe's and interpret the emergence. And very nicely, the manager of the Trader Joe's would come with treats to everyone. And, it's just a beautiful thing. Do that next time you're in Tucson.
Amazing. Thank you, Rodrigo.
Well, aside from the what's happening with the Tren Maya, I think your story is a story of success, and you've dedicated your life. So thank you, and thank you for this really inspiring talk. Yes, I almost don't want to say goodbye, but
thank you very much indeed, Rodrigo.
Thank you very much. That's been splendid. We're delighted that we're able to give a donation from the British Mexican Society to your charity. And if anybody else wants to give a donation, presumably they just go to your website and they can...
Bioconsciencia, yes.
Thank you very much indeed. Any of you who are not members of the British Mexican Society, please do consider joining. And it's been a wonderful evening. It's exceeded every expectation. And so thank you very much indeed, Rodrigo.
Be happy to give you updates whenever you want on any other topic, bats or no bats, whatever. I'm here. Thank you, guys. I've had a blast.